we open up with Black Ops 2. Waited 2-ish years, you know. I'm saying 2-ish years because of the release of Black Ops 1, but just a year if you're going by the final DLC. And we were teased with Transit. And Transit was the follow-up, the answer that we intended. You know, it was supposed to pick up at a cliffhanger that no one expected. And that's partly because Jimmy Zielinski didn't follow rules. He didn't telegraph that Moon was going to happen. Moon was supposed to be a Paris map. You know? It was supposed to be in the catacombs, and if you look through the game files, there's textures left over from this. And then Black Ops 2 opens with Transit. And the hype behind the idea completely changing the gameplay again. A bus. People were dumbfounded. They were like, this map is going to be gigantic and interesting and blowing people's minds. And then it came out. And at first, everything about it was interesting, and it was answering some questions I had, but not well. And it was giving me more questions of irritation and disappointment in the story. What the fuck is Avogadro? What is this? What is that? None of it made sense. And it hurt this game really, really bad to start like that. And if you bought the collector's editions, like I did, I had Nuketown Zombies, so it let me manage without having to go through such tedious gameplay and such difficult, like, processes just to play and enjoy the map. So we had Nuketown for a while, and Nuketown was entertaining. I remember hitting 45 on that with a friend within the first week of playing the map, but that's not saying much. It was an easy map. And then Die Rise came out. In Die Rise, again, people were terrified, and I remember all the YouTubers thought it was going to be another transit-type map, because they said zombies will be more like a campaign, maybe more maps will have transportation-like things, and people were hesitant and worried. And then Die Rise came out, and it was a good return to formula, but the design of the map was atrocious. Zielinski's ability to design fun and entertaining maps had fallen apart in minutes. And it came from the issue of the inability to backtrack in Die Rise. Even with the trample steam, you were still limited to your ability to track back. And you had the trample steam as a crutch, and you had to get rid of the shield, and they added overpowered weapons which removed the tension, and the Sliquifire when it first came out was pathetically easy. I had high rounds on there that were kind of obscene, especially for my skill level not being that developed yet with Die Rise. And Die Rise started to perpetuate the transit character's story, and that story was trying to tell a more personal civilian story, but the thing is they made caricatures, not people. It worked for Black Ops 1 with the Fabulous Four being these outlandish characters, and that was the point. It was meant to dry you away from the horror of World War II. World War II still being a sensitive subject with the Holocaust and the Nazis' treatment of its people, and the war and its treatment of people outside of its country. Horrific things. And it had a chance to now actually be truly terrifying and truly explore the fearfulness of humanity in the face of the zombie apocalypse, which didn't start at the end of Moon. If you've been paying attention to the story, zombie outbreaks were occurring around the planet more and more frequently. Tensions were increasing. Nations did not know what to do, and you got a little bit of that answer with Teddy, the bus driver in Transit. And then you got some of it with the TV in Transit, and some of it with the TV in Die Rise, explaining people dealing with this world. You had Russman's mysterious backstory. What was he doing? You had Stullinger eating the flesh, and you had these great concepts bogged down by weak characters on top of tedious and irritating Easter eggs, on top of 2 maps in a row with very poor design. Very uncomfortable, very weak. And then we got Mob of the Dead. Mob of the Dead was incredible. From its storytelling and its characters to the aesthetic of the entire map. It's going against the formula and actually just going with something completely supernatural, bar any science. And it started to deal with this concept of limbo, this concept of responsibility, duty, what is good, what is evil. Is the devil in charge here? How does this tie into everything? And you saw some interesting things about the Grand Canyon and whatnot going on in the Warden's Library, which will be less addressed in a minute when I talk about Buried. But it was perplexing to see such ideas exist and be brought out even further, knowing about the occult and zombies, knowing about satanic involvement, knowing about the previous aforementioned Javelin or Bahamut, or the devil and Dr. Monty and that mess, which we will also get to later. It was really starting to hit the fan in the best way. And then we left Mob of the Dead into Buried. And Buried tried to copy the gameplay style of Mob of the Dead with all its quest, Easter egg things. As you're seeing on screen right now, all the objectives you could just complete. But again, Zelinsky was very weak in his map design. Buried tried to have quests and keeping you involved and entranced for longer periods of time, and it didn't work because it was tedious having to run around with the big guy and having to do this and that and having to just run this literal giant mongoloid around was unfun. You know, the maze was a brilliant idea. The way the map flowed was incredibly interesting. The Paralyzer is still one of the best wonder weapons to date. And there were so many good things, and Zelinsky had really tried to bust his ass and pick things up and become a better map maker. And, you know, he even started to give a shit about the transit characters. I really started to care because their stories started to wrap, but I understand that Buried was the last time we'd see him in-game. I know the comics are a thing, but the thing is the comics kind of nullified the purpose of their ending. Their ending was brilliant, and their ending was foreshadowing things the same way Mob of the Dead was foreshadowing things. And then we hit Origins, and Origins was a step in the right direction. It was bringing things full circle. It was creating a story that was evolved, and it was finally going into this dark occult mysticism and answering questions, even giving us the thought of these staves being progenitors to the wonder weapons we knew, maybe Richtof and Amaxis, and their desire to reclaim those days of scientific advancement, success, and magic, recreated these weapons, and it was wildly interesting to see that idea there. And you had all these thoughts of occult and all these messages and the giants and the possible introduction of multiverses and the actual idea of ancients, you know, actually bringing this real technology, which we had roughly seen. We had seen the Golden Rod, and we had played with crystal powered technologies such as the 3179 JGB-215, the baby gun. And we had gotten these concepts, and they had been subtly teased to us. The VR-11 from Call of the Dead and the Sekhmet's Vigor on the end of the upgraded staves really started answering questions, even in asking more questions, because we now knew what these things came from, but where did these come from? And it was so great to have Vril and Agartha and the Ether truly start to be explained. And that's how we ended Black Ops 2 on this cliffhanger, but with all the things we desired to know. And then we move on